Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The tension in the Newman mansion was palpable, the kind that gnawed at the edges of sanity and left the air thick with dread. Victor Newman lay sprawled across the marble floor, his hand trembling as he reached futilely for his phone, a pool of blood slowly widening beneath him, and he could barely register the sound of the front door slamming, followed by hurried footsteps retreating down the hallway. His eyes narrowing as he realized the unmistakable figures of Billy and Phyllis vanishing into the night, their departure leaving behind a silence more menacing than any shouted argument, because it was the silence of betrayal, the silence of a deadly plan finally set into motion, and Victor's mind raced even as his body protested, the metallic taste of blood on his lips mingling with the acrid scent of fear and rage, and yet, even in this near defeat, he refused to surrender. He knew, as only Victor Newman could know, that the stakes were higher than ever, that the laptop was out there somewhere, the very device that could destroy everything he had built, everything he had fought for, and perhaps everything he had ever loved, and somewhere in his mind, behind the haze of pain and shock, he could hear the echoes of Phyllis's laughter from months ago, the way she had whispered to Billy, "We have him right where we want him," and now, tragically, those words were no longer a tease but a haunting reality as he realized the depth of their treachery. Outside, the cold night air carried the faint rustle of the getaway car's tires over wet pavement, and he imagined them looking over their shoulders, savoring the thrill of their escape, oblivious to the storm that was about to descend upon them, because Victor Newman was not a man who succumbed quietly, who let injustice stand unchallenged, and already, even from the floor, he began to calculate, to plot, to weave the threads of vengeance and strategy that had defined his life, his empire, his very identity. While inside the mansion, Nikki's frantic footsteps echoed down the hall, her voice breaking as she called out his name, panic threading through every syllable, and she froze at the scene, her hands covering her mouth as she took in the sight of Victor, her heart lurching with fear and disbelief, the horror of betrayal and near tragedy crashing down on her in waves, and yet even in her shock, a spark of determination ignited because Nikki Newman had never been one to cower in the face of danger, and she knelt beside him, whispering reassurances he barely heard, her fingers pressing desperately against the wound to staunch the bleeding, while in her mind, she was already envisioning the retribution that would follow, imagining confronting Billy and Phyllis, demanding answers, forcing the truth into the light, because nothing, absolutely nothing, could go unpunished when it came to the safety and honor of her family. And Victor in turn grimaced, his eyes flashing with fury. Beneath the pain, his lips curling into a faint, almost sinister smirk, because even as he teetered on the edge of consciousness, he knew that the laptop, his precious, dangerous laptop, was the key, the ultimate leverage, and he would stop at nothing to retrieve it, to uncover the full extent of the betrayal, to turn the tables so completely that Billy and Phyllis would never recover. And as he summoned the last of his strength to reach for his phone, to call in backup, to ignite the storm that was coming, the mansion itself seemed to tremble in anticipation, the chandelier swaying slightly, the shadows lengthening, as if the house itself recognized the magnitude of the showdown, the deadly discovery that had set the stage for a night that would alter every relationship, every alliance, every heart in Genoa City. And in that moment, even as pain and rage warred within him, Victor's mind was razor-sharp, a predator calculating each move, each countermove, and beyond the immediate chaos, beyond the blood and fear, a singular thought dominated. Nothing, not betrayal, not deceit, not cowardice could ever truly defeat him, because Victor Newman had survived worse, endured worse, and he would rise again, stronger, more relentless, more unstoppable than ever. And somewhere in the darkened streets, the fleeing figures of Billy and Phyllis sped away, unaware that every mile carried them closer to reckoning, to the consequences that would inevitably follow their audacious betrayal. While inside the mansion, Nikki's whispered words, full of fear, love, and defiance, mingled with Victor's growled promises of vengeance, creating a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife, setting the stage for a battle of wits, courage, and fury, the kind that had defined Genoa City for decades. And as the night deepened, shadows stretching across the grand hall, the laptop's location remained the ultimate question mark, the object of desire and danger, its secrets capable of destroying lives and empires alike. And so the players moved, some in haste, some in hidden corners, each driven by love, fear, greed, or survival instinct, as the story of betrayal, survival, and deadly discovery unfolded with every heartbeat, every whisper, every shuddering breath, until the city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when all truths would finally be revealed, and when the cost of that revelation would become shockingly, irrevocably clear. Billy and Phyllis didn't speak as they drove, the silence between them heavier than the night air pressing against the car windows, each heartbeat a reminder of the audacity of their actions, the betrayal they had committed, the sheer recklessness of leaving Victor Newman, lying on the floor of his own mansion, and yet in that silence each had their own storm brewing. Phyllis, her fingers gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, was consumed by a mixture of guilt and exhilaration, a dangerous cocktail that made her stomach twist and churn, while Billy, sitting rigidly in the passenger seat, stared out into the darkness, replaying Victor's pained expression, the glint of fury in his eyes, the subtle smirk that had haunted his dreams ever since, and both knew that the night was far from over, that Victor's empire, his wrath, and his cunning were not things one escaped lightly, that sooner or later, the repercussions of their actions would descend upon them like a storm with no mercy, and yet, even as the weight of that truth pressed upon them, neither dared to speak, for fear that any words would unravel the fragile alliance that had allowed them to flee the mansion, allowed them to taste for a fleeting moment the thrill of outmaneuvering a man who had never been defeated, a man whose very name was synonymous with power, vengeance, and survival. And as the car sped down winding roads toward some unknown, supposedly safe destination, Phyllis's thoughts drifted involuntarily back to Nikki and Victor, imagining Nikki's horror at finding Victor wounded, imagining the frantic, desperate energy she would have unleashed in trying to save him, imagining the scene unfolding in painstaking detail, the sound of her voice, the look in her eyes, the way she would cling to Victor, refusing to let him succumb to the pain, and a pang of envy stabbed through Phyllis, bitter and sharp, because she had always been envious of Nikki, of the power she wielded over Victor, over the family, over the emotions of those around her, and in that envy, a dangerous resolve formed, a determination to prove herself not just clever but untouchable, invincible, while Billy's mind was elsewhere, haunted by the practicalities of the situation, calculating the risks, wondering how long before Victor's allies discovered the betrayal, how quickly the network of his empire would begin to tighten around them, how long before the walls closed in, and, even in the midst of fear, a spark of exhilaration burned bright, a thrill at having executed the impossible, at having dared to challenge a man who seemed untouchable, a man who, until this night, had always been several steps ahead of anyone foolish enough to oppose him, and yet, as the miles stretched on, the tension in the car became almost unbearable, each stoplight a reminder that the world outside was still moving, that time was not on their side, that eventually, the consequences would catch up with them, and somewhere in the shadows, Victor Newman was already mobilizing, his mind a whirlwind of strategy, vengeance, and fury, calculating every possible move, every likely escape route, every weak point in their plan, and even from a hospital bed or perhaps back in the mansion after being rescued, Victor's presence would be felt, looming over every corner of Genoa City, a specter of retribution that could not be ignored, could not be outrun. And in the mansion, Nikki had called for immediate assistance, the sound of her voice frantic but commanding, the phone cradled against her ear as paramedics and security converged on the scene, and while her hands pressed against Victor's wound, trying to stem the blood flow, trying to hold him, trying to keep him alive, her mind raced through every possible outcome, every scenario, every potential path to justice, to revenge, to restoring the balance that Billy and Phyllis had so recklessly disrupted. And as she glanced down at him, noting the way his eyes flared even in pain, the way his lips curled into that familiar, maddening smirk, she felt both fear and a thrill, because Nikki Newman had survived countless crises, had faced betrayal and danger time and again, and she knew instinctively that the night was only beginning, that the game had just taken a dangerous turn, that every choice, every action, every whispered word could tilt the scales, could shift the outcome in ways that no one, not even Victor himself, could fully anticipate. And in that moment, as the city around them slept unaware of the storm brewing, Nikki whispered his name again, her voice low and fierce, a mixture of love, defiance, and rage, while Victor, even in agony, murmured back that he would not be defeated, that the laptop, the betrayal, the treachery, they would all be dealt with, and the reckoning when it came would be merciless and total, a reckoning that would shake the foundations of Genoa City and remind every schemer, Every traitor, every would-be adversary that Victor Newman was not a man to cross lightly, that vengeance was a craft he wielded with surgical precision, and as the hours ticked by, the night stretching endlessly before them, Phyllis and Billy parked in a nondescript lot, hearts pounding, realizing too late that safety was an illusion, that the city was smaller than they had imagined, that their footprints, their choices, their very existence was being tracked in ways they couldn't even comprehend, and at the same time, Nikki and Victor's allies were mobilizing investigators, friends, loyalists, each moving with a quiet intensity, gathering fragments of information, putting together the puzzle of betrayal and the deadly discovery of the laptop, and the tension escalated with every passing minute, a tension that could explode at any moment, because in Genoa City, secrets never stayed buried, lies never went unpunished, and the forces of love, loyalty, greed, and vengeance collided in a dangerous dance, a dance that could destroy families, empires, and hearts, and as the night deepened into the early hours, the laptop, silent, mysterious, and impossibly powerful, remained the key, the prize, the weapon, the proof of betrayal, the thing that could topple the Newman Empire or restore it, depending on whose hands it ended up in, and somewhere, hidden behind layers of fear, guilt, and desperate hope, the inevitable confrontation loomed, each character poised on the knife edge of destiny, unaware of exactly how it would unfold, unaware of how high the stakes truly were, unaware that in Genoa City nothing, no betrayal, no treachery, no love, no loyalty, ever stayed buried because secrets have a way of surfacing, and when they do the consequences are always far deadlier than anyone expects. As the first pale light of dawn crept over Genoa City, casting long trembling shadows across streets still slick from last night's rain, Billy and Phyllis sat huddled in a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the dim glow of a single overhead bulb revealing the exhaustion etched into their faces, the anxiety in their eyes, the silent acknowledgement that the night's daring escape had only delayed the inevitable, for they knew that Victor Newman was not a man who forgave, who forgot, or who hesitated, and as they whispered frantic plans to one another, voices barely rising above the hum of the flickering light, each word was weighted with fear, excitement, and the faintest shimmer of guilt, though neither admitted it, and every passing moment, every distant siren, every shadow moving outside the broken windows, made the hair on their necks rise, for in the city, every corner could harbor an ally of Victor, every alleyway a spy, every phone line tapped, every car followed, and yet, for all their fear, they could not resist imagining that perhaps, just perhaps, they had outsmarted him, that the laptop that contained the evidence of their plot, the proof of Victor's vulnerabilities, the secrets that could topple empires, was finally theirs to wield, a dangerous weapon in hands desperate for power, revenge, and validation, and Phyllis, leaning back against a cold, cracked wall, ran her fingers through her hair, her mind replaying Victor's grimace, the way his eyes had flashed with both pain and something more terrifying, calculated fury, the type that could strike without warning, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment, and she shivered involuntarily, remembering the subtle smirk that had curled his lips even as he lay vulnerable on the floor, a smirk that spoke volumes of the storm yet to come, while Billy, across from her, stared at the ground, jaw tight, his thoughts spinning with the enormity of what they had done, the betrayal, the audacity, the sheer madness of leaving Victor Newman to die while they fled with the one item that could destroy him, and yet in that moment of tension, of guilt, of near panic, both could feel the thrill of having executed a plan so audacious it could only belong in the annals of Genoa City legend, and they whispered to each other, their voices trembling between fear and hope, plotting next steps, calculating possible allies, imagining contingencies, while outside, the city woke. Unaware, the streets bustling with the routines of ordinary life, oblivious to the extraordinary chaos unfolding just beyond the shadows, and within the mansion, Nikki, now seated beside Victor on a stretcher, her hands pressed to his still trembling body, could feel the heartbeat of the city echoing through the walls, a rhythm that seemed to match her own frantic pulse, and as paramedics prepared to transport him to the hospital, her mind raced, calculating how to safeguard the Newman Empire, how to retrieve the laptop, how to confront Billy and Phyllis, how to ensure that the betrayal would be punished and that Victor's wrath would not be diminished by the near tragedy, and Victor, despite pain and exhaustion, murmured plans in broken phrases, his voice low and dangerous, his mind already several moves ahead, imagining traps, counterattacks, leverage points, alliances to mobilize, secrets to expose, and the precise moment when the tables would turn in justice, Victor Newman style. would be served, while in a sleek, hidden corner of the city Sharon, Victor's ever-loyal confidant, received a cryptic phone call detailing the events of the night, and immediately, she began piecing together clues, contacting allies, sending discreet messages, all while maintaining the calm, collected facade that had made her such a formidable ally, because in Genoa City, appearances were everything and timing was everything, and Victor Newman's enemies, even those closest to him, could be toppled if even a single misstep occurred, and so the network of events began to expand outward like ripples on water, each character's actions intersecting with another's, creating a tension so thick it seemed to shimmer in the air. As detectives combed the city for evidence, security teams traced phone records, and the shadow of the laptop loomed larger than life, its existence and potential consequences igniting fear, greed, and desperation in equal measure, while Billy, increasingly restless, paced the floor of the warehouse muttering possibilities, debating with Phyllis over the best escape routes, the likelihood of discovery, the probability that Victor had already mobilized his resources, and with every word, every motion, the sense of impending doom grew, for they could feel, even in their brief moments of bravado, that the walls were closing in, that the city itself was an accomplice to Victor Newman's inevitable response, and as the hours passed, the tension escalated further, intertwining with Nikki's growing resolve, Victor's unyielding fury, and the unseen forces moving to restore order and exact justice, while the laptop remained a silent, omnipotent presence, the ultimate prize and the ultimate threat, capable of turning every alliance into a battlefield, every relationship into a test of loyalty and cunning, and as night fell once again, casting a cloak of darkness over the city, every character, from the fleeing betrayers to the vengeful Newman patriarch and his loyal allies, was positioned like pieces on a chessboard, each waiting, watching, anticipating, ready to strike, and the sense of inevitability of catastrophe, of dramatic confrontation, hung over Genoa City like a storm about to break, promising that when the truth emerged, when the laptop's secrets were revealed, the consequences would be as shocking as they were unstoppable, reshaping lives, alliances, and the very fabric of the city. And in that unfolding maelstrom, every heartbeat, every whispered word, every subtle glance could tip the balance, because in the world of Victor Newman, in the dangerous, glamorous, and ruthless world of Genoa City, betrayal was never forgiven, secrets were never contained, and power, like vengeance, was absolute, inevitable, and deadly. The streets of Genoa City seemed almost to hold their breath as dawn turned to morning, the soft hum of traffic masking the undercurrent of tension that pulsed through every corner of the city, for even as Billy and Phyllis huddled in their hideout, their minds racing with plans and fears, Victor Newman's influence stretched far beyond the walls of his mansion, his allies mobilizing with precision, his enemies trembling in anticipation, and Nikki, sitting beside him in the sterile glow of the hospital room, felt a surge of protective determination, her hands never leaving his, her voice calm but fierce as she outlined what had to be done, the strategies, the allies to contact, the networks to tap, while Victor, despite his pain, nodded in silent approval, already running through every possible scenario in his mind, calculating the moves Billy and Phyllis might make, imagining the ways to corner them, to expose them, to reclaim the laptop and with it, the absolute control that only Victor Newman could wield. And somewhere in the city, Sharon followed the trail of breadcrumbs left by the fleeing duo, phone pressed tightly to her ear as she coordinated with detectives, private eyes, and a few carefully chosen friends, knowing that every second counted, that every misstep could allow the traitors to slip further from reach, and yet even as fear and tension gripped every participant, there was a strange exhilaration in the air, the thrill of a dangerous game unfolding in real time where the stakes were lives, legacies, and the fragile reputations of everyone involved. And as hours passed, Billy's bravado began to crack, his eyes darting nervously to shadows that seemed to flicker just beyond the warehouse windows, Phyllis's own confidence wavering under the weight of guilt, worry, and the knowledge that they had underestimated Victor's reach, while Nikki, speaking quietly but firmly, began contacting trusted allies, weaving together a plan to retrieve the laptop, to protect the Newman empire, and to ensure that the betrayal would not go unpunished. And as Victor's strength gradually returned, his mind sharpened with cold, calculating fury, envisioning confrontations, traps, and the precise timing of every move needed to reclaim what was his, the laptop, the proof, the leverage, and the ultimate satisfaction of showing Billy and Phyllis that no scheme could outsmart him, no betrayal could escape the long shadow of Victor Newman. And somewhere between fear, determination, and the inexorable pull of fate, Genoa City itself seemed poised on the edge of chaos, every alleyway, every office, every corner holding the possibility of discovery, confrontation, or revelation. The lives of those involved poised precariously as the threads of betrayal, loyalty, love, and vengeance twisted tighter and tighter, ready to snap, because in Victor Newman's world, there were no coincidences, no escapes, and no second chances. And as the city pulsed with life, around them every character, from the betrayers to the betrayed, from the vigilant allies to the hidden observers, was caught in a web of suspense and drama that promised devastation, redemption, or shocking revelation at any moment, while the laptop, silent and potent, remained the linchpin of all that was unfolding, its secrets the ultimate prize and the ultimate threat. And as the hours stretched forward, one undeniable truth remained. In Genoa City, the game was never over, the stakes were never small, and Victor Newman's reach, influence, and wrath could strike when least expected, changing lives forever.